I've always had this thing about roller coasters, not just the thrill, not just the speed, but the strange poetry of them. There's something hypnotic about the way steel and gravity wage this silent, invisible war, the way your stomach lurches and your mind screams that you're about to die, yet the rails hold you, the engineering saves you, and you return to the station breathless but alive. Most of the time, anyway. I've followed coaster news for years, ride openings, design innovations, world records, and also the dark side of the industry. Everyone hears about the big ones, the infamous accidents that make headlines. Like the jet line in Sweden, running for decades without serious incident until one day, after a replacement part wasn't properly tested, a train derailed and people died. Or the tragedy on the Texas Giant at Six Flags, when a restraint came undone mid-ride and a woman was thrown to her death. Those stories stick with you if you're a true coaster fan. They haunt you the way they haunt me. I work at a small Six Flags-style theme park in my hometown. I'm not going to name it, though if you follow the news, you might be able to guess, it's had its share of stories. It's not huge, but it's big enough to have a few thrill rides, a couple of coasters worth bragging about, plus the usual carnival games, fried food, and overpriced drinks. I've been a ride operator there for a few months, long enough to know the rhythms of the park, the smell of popcorn and grease in the air, the constant chatter from the crowd, the music looping from the speakers until you can hear it in your sleep. Long enough to know the quirks of each ride, the way one might groan slightly at the top of a lift hill, or how another's restraints sometimes need an extra click to lock properly. But there's one ride that doesn't have quirks, because it doesn't have passengers. Ever. It's a roller coaster called the Ultimate, and it's never been opened to the public. Not once since I've been here. Not once, as far as I can tell, in years. I see it all the time, though. It's hard to miss, sleek, jet black track, twisting like a serpent against the bright blue sky, with two loops, one massive, the other smaller and tighter. When you walk through the park, you can catch glimpses of it between the buildings and trees, the way it snakes through its circuit, fast and smooth and, at least to the eye, perfectly functional. The thing is, I also see it running. Not with guests, but on test cycles. It's not rotting away in some forgotten corner, maintenance crews keep it pristine. The trains are polished, the track gleams in the sun, and every so often, the chain lift rattles to life, pulling an empty train up toward that first heart-stopping drop before it screams through the course like it's chasing something invisible. It puzzled me from day one. Why build something so beautiful, so clearly operational, only to keep it locked away? One afternoon, early in my time at the park, I asked one of my co-workers, Markesha, about it. She's been here longer than I have. She's a little older, sharp-witted, with a dry, teasing sense of humor. When I asked, she glanced up at the Ultimate's towering lift hill and said, "Never." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "No, seriously," I said. "When are they opening it?" She shrugged. "Boss says it's got some sort of bug." Her tone was casual, but there was something behind her eyes, like she knew more than she wanted to say. I pressed a little, but she didn't elaborate, just turned the conversation back to whatever we'd been talking about before. I filed it away as one of those weird management decisions you see in theme parks, maybe a liability issue or a corporate disagreement. Still, the idea of a bug in a roller coaster stuck with me. It's not the kind of language you usually hear. Mechanical issue, sure. Safety violation, sure. But bug? That's something you hear about in software, not steel and hydraulics. As the weeks went on, I got to know Markesha better. We started hanging out after work, then casually dating. She's nerdy like me, into weird facts and morbid trivia. We're different in a lot of ways. She's more impulsive, I'm more cautious, but we share a passion for roller coasters. We'd spend evenings watching videos of rides from around the world, debating our favorites, ranking the deadliest accidents. I know that sounds messed up, but for us, it was like people talking about their favorite horror movies. A mix of fascination and fear. Every so often, the ultimate would come up in conversation, usually when we walked past it on break. She'd glance at it and smirk, like she knew a secret. One day, months after my first question, she leaned close and said, "We should ride it." I thought she was joking again. "Wait, for real?" She nodded. "Last time it got safety checked, it passed everything. I saw them put someone on it yesterday during a test run. I think the boss is just superstitious. He's convinced it'll go wrong, like the first time." That phrase, "the first time," made my stomach tighten. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she breezed past it. She made it sound harmless. The ultimate had been inspected. No mechanical issues, no design flaws. In fact, according to her, it ran smoother than our flagship ride, the Cobra, which had its own quirks and occasional downtime. I couldn't deny it looked amazing. The color scheme was all black on black, the trains glossy like obsidian, the track matte like charcoal. It wasn't the tallest or fastest coaster in the world, but it was the fastest in the park. The layout was a work of art, flowing, aggressive, but not overwhelming. That giant first loop was its showpiece, visible from almost anywhere in the park, followed by a smaller loop and a series of snake-like curves that looked like they'd pin you to your seat. And yet, it never carried a guest. I told myself it was probably fine. Like Mark Esha said, the thing had been checked and double-checked. It passed all safety regulations. Neither of us had health issues. The rational part of me knew there was no reason not to ride it. But the irrational part, the part that knew roller coasters can kill you in ways you'd never think of, hesitated. We'd talked about those ways before. Mechanical failures, like the jet line. Design flaws, like that insane water slide in Kansas that decapitated a 10-year-old boy because its designers had no business designing rides. Human error, like operators missing a loose restraint. And then there were the bizarre, borderline Darwin Award deaths, like people trespassing in restricted ride zones and getting hit by coaster trains. Those, I always argued, didn't count. You can't blame the ride if someone climbs a fence into danger. The ultimate, from all appearances, had none of these issues. It was as safe as steel and engineering could make it. So when Mark Esha brought it up again, this time suggesting we do it after hours, I found myself agreeing. Not immediately, not without a twinge of apprehension, but still. I agreed. We made a plan. It would be me, her, and her friend Carlos, another park employee I'd met once or twice. He's one of those loud, excitable guys who always seems to be in motion. I figured his enthusiasm would make the night more fun, less nerve-wracking. The idea was simple: we'd wait until closing, then meet up at the entrance to the ultimate. The park would still have a few staff around, cleaning up or doing maintenance, but no guests. We'd have the place to ourselves. Mark Esha would do a final check of the train, I'd handle the operator controls, and we'd take turns riding. As the day of our little adventure approached, I couldn't help but watch the ultimate more closely during my shifts. The way it moved. The way the black train seemed to vanish into its own shadows at certain angles. The sound it made, lower and smoother than the Cobra's clattering roar, almost like it was humming to itself. I noticed, too, that whenever I saw it running empty, I'd lose sight of the train for a moment behind the second loop, and when it emerged, I'd get this strange feeling in my chest. Nothing I could explain, just off. Like the air had shifted. But I pushed that aside. I told myself it was nothing. Just anticipation, or maybe nerves. The night finally came. My shift ended, but I lingered in the park under the pretense of helping with cleanup. When the last of the guests had drifted out the gates and the music shut off, I headed for the main entrance to the ultimate. Carlos was already there, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Man, this is gonna be awesome," he said. We walked together toward those towering black loops, the coaster track looming over us like some great skeletal beast. As we got closer, we heard it, chain lift rattling, wheels humming, and then saw the train whipping past, a blur of black on black. Someone was in it, I thought for a second, but it was moving too fast to be sure. The speed caught me off guard. Not the fastest coaster in the world, but definitely the fastest here. "Dude, that thing is awesome," Carlos shouted over the noise. When we reached the operator platform, Markesha was there, checking the restraints. "Everything's good," she said. "We're first," she added, jerking her head at Carlos. I started to protest, wanting my turn first, but she waved me off. "Nah, I get first dibs. I'll run it for you after." She had that mischievous grin she gets when she knows she's winning an argument. "Let's do this," Carlos said, practically bouncing. I went into operator mode, performing the standard safety checks, make sure the harnesses clicked, pull on them firmly to ensure they were locked, check for loose items. The train was otherwise empty. I gave them both the all clear, stepped back, and placed my hand on the control button. The anticipation was electric. My heart was racing. Somewhere between fear and excitement, I pressed down, sending them up that towering lift hill into the night. The train started its slow ascent, the familiar clack 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 of the lift hill echoing into the night air, only now it felt louder, sharper somehow, without the usual background noise of a full park to drown it out. I watched them climb, their faces lit by the dim safety lights along the track. Carlos threw his hands up and yelled something I couldn't make out over the distance, and Markesha looked back down at me with a grin before turning forward again. The lift hill dragged on, the train inching higher until it reached the crest, pausing for that split second of weightless suspense. Then gravity took over and the black serpent of steel dropped like it was trying to tear itself from the sky. I could hear their screams, sharp and joyful at first, the wind stealing their voices as they whipped past me in a blur, hair flying, harnesses holding tight. The first loop came up fast, and I tracked the train as it dove into the arc, flipping them upside down and back upright in one smooth, perfect motion. The sound of the wheels on track was low and clean, the kind of ride where you can feel the speed just by looking at it. I was grinning despite myself, already imagining my own turn. But as they disappeared into the shadowed section between the first and second loop, my smile faltered. For just a heartbeat, I thought I saw something. Another figure. Near the back of the train. My mind immediately pushed back. No, I was wrong, I had seen the train leave, I had checked every seat, there was no one else, but the image had been so clear, a shape hunched slightly forward, too still for the chaos of the ride, face lost in shadow. The second loop was smaller, tighter, and I expected their screams to pick back up as the G-forces slammed them into their seats, but when the train emerged, it was silent. Completely, unnervingly silent. The wheels still hummed against the rails, the ride still moved at top speed, but no laughter, no yelling, nothing human. My skin prickled. I stepped out from under the small awning of the operator station to get a better look as the train entered the last section, a wide, sweeping curve followed by the brake run. I could see them now, Markesha in the front row, Carlos beside her, both slumped slightly forward, heads tilted at unnatural angles. My first thought was that they'd passed out, maybe from the force of the loops. It wasn't common on coasters this size, but it happened. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. Even unconscious people have a kind of slackness, a rise and fall of breath, a twitch here or there. They had none of that. And the back of the train, the seat where I thought I'd seen the extra passenger, was empty again. I told myself to move, to get to them quickly, but my legs felt heavy. A cold pressure had settled in my chest, like the air itself had thickened. Something about the silence, the complete absence of sound except for the slowing clatter of the brake run, made my thoughts sluggish. The train eased into the station and stopped with a gentle hiss. I could see their faces more clearly now. Eyes half open but glassy, skin pale under the harsh platform lights. Still no movement. Still no sound. I didn't know whether to shout their names or run to them. For a few seconds, I just stood there, gripping the edge of the control panel so hard my knuckles hurt. My mind was rifling through possible explanations, desperate for something normal, fainting, low blood sugar, dehydration, but each one felt thinner than the last. A memory bubbled up from a conversation Markesha and I had once had, late one night after watching a documentary about experimental ride designs. We'd talked about something called the euthanasia coaster, a theoretical concept dreamed up by a Lithuanian artist. 7 loops in a row, each tighter than the last, designed to subject riders to sustained G-forces that would cut off oxygen to the brain, causing them to black out and eventually die. The idea was horrifying to me, but Markesha had laughed, saying it would be a terrific way to go. I shoved the memory aside. This wasn't the euthanasia coaster. This was a regular steel coaster in a small-town park. It had passed safety checks. There was no reason, no way, for them to be. I don't even like finishing the thought. I took a step forward, then another, until I was at the front of the train. My hands shook as I reached for the release on Markesha's restraint, but before I could touch it, movement in my peripheral vision made me snap my head up. Someone was walking past the ride on the pathway beyond the fence, a park employee pushing a drink cart back toward the storage area. My voice came out cracked and too loud as I called for help. She looked over, frowned, then abandoned the cart to come through the gate. She took one look at the train, at Markesha and Carlos, and muttered a sharp curse under her breath before pulling out her phone and dialing. I stepped back, grateful and sick at the same time. I didn't want to be the one to unbuckle them, didn't want to feel the dead weight of their bodies in my hands. Emergency services arrived quickly, but it felt like an eternity. They worked in hushed, efficient movements, unstrapping my friends, checking for pulses that I already knew weren't there, and lifting them onto stretchers. No frantic chest compressions, no defibrillators, no rush. Just quiet finality. One of the EMTs glanced at me, his expression unreadable, and I knew there was nothing to be done. I stood frozen by the control panel long after they left, the platform empty except for the empty train. The hum of the motors had gone silent. The track stretched ahead into darkness, looking harmless now, like it was just another ride. But I knew better. And I had this gnawing feeling, no, certainty, that something else had been in that train with them. Something that didn't belong. Something that had gotten off without ever stepping onto the platform. The next morning, the park opened like nothing had happened. Guests poured in, music blared from the speakers, the smell of fried dough and popcorn drifted through the air, and rides whirred to life one by one. The ultimate, though, sat still and silent, its black loops cutting into the morning sky like a shadow that refused to move. There was no mention of last night, no announcement, no hushed gossip among the staff, at least, not where guests could hear. Management has a way of smothering news before it can catch fire. And without crowds to witness what happened, without screaming guests or chaos or sirens echoing through the midway, there was nothing for the media to grab onto. Just two bodies removed quietly under the cover of night. I walked through my shift in a kind of numb haze, every sound too sharp, every color too bright. I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head, the second loop, the stillness, the empty seat at the back of the train. I tried telling myself I'd imagined it. Stress, shadows, tricks of the light. But that didn't explain the way I'd felt in my chest, that cold, heavy pressure, or the look on the face of the employee with the drink cart when she saw them. She'd known something. I just hadn't understood what. It was later that week, after my shift, that I got my first real answer. I was in the break room, sipping stale coffee, when one of the older maintenance guys came in. He was one of those lifers, the kind of man who'd been working the park since long before I was born, his face weathered, his hands permanently stained with grease. We'd spoken a few times, mostly about ride operations and mechanical quirks. But this time, when he saw me, he shut the door behind him and lowered his voice. "You were there the other night," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, unsure what he wanted me to say. He studied me for a long moment before continuing. "Boss calls it a bug, but it ain't a bug. Not like you're thinking. Not mechanical. Not something you can fix with a wrench or a part order." He glanced toward the closed door, then leaned a little closer. "It's a passenger." I thought I'd misheard him. "What?" "A passenger. Shows up after the first loop. Every damn time. You can run that train empty, with nobody on it, but by the time it hits that second loop, there's someone in one of the back seats." My mouth went dry. "Like, a person?" He gave me a look that was almost pity. "Something shaped like one. You won't see it on the lift hill. Won't see it before the drop. It's only after that first loop. And once it's there, you can't make it leave. Not till the ride's over." But I stopped, my mind tumbling over itself. If it's always there, why keep running the tests? He shrugged. "Some folks think it's just a trick of the light. Others think if they keep running it empty, maybe it'll get bored. Go away. But it's been years, and it's still there." His voice lowered even further. "Used to be just one of them. Just one seat you'd see it in. But they don't stay alone. Every time someone rides, every time they don't come back, another one shows up." My stomach turned. "How many?" He hesitated. "3 now." The number hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't have to ask who the newest ones were. I saw them in my head, Markesha and Carlos, forever frozen in those seats, eyes glassy, heads tilted. I wanted to argue, to tell him that ghosts aren't real, that there's no way a roller coaster can do whatever it did to them. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, I believed him. I remembered the shape I'd seen in the back seat, too still, too solid to be a shadow. And I remembered the feeling, that weight in my chest, like something unseen had turned its attention to me. For the rest of the season, I avoided the ultimate. I didn't even like walking past it. But every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of it from across the park during a test run. I'd watch the black train climb, drop, loop once, and vanish briefly behind the structure. And when it came back into view, even from far away, I could swear I saw movement in the back rows. Not one figure. Not two. Three. Sitting perfectly still, riding the rest of the circuit in silence. I'd think about who they were before. Not just Markesha and Carlos, but whoever the first one had been, the one that started it all. No one ever told me, and I didn't ask. Maybe it was better not to know. Because if I knew their name, if I knew their story, it might make the truth too solid. Too real. Closing the ride permanently should have been the obvious choice, but management never did. It's too expensive to dismantle, too costly to just let it rot, and maybe, someone up top doesn't believe in anything beyond gears and steel. They keep it maintained, keep it ready, as if one day they'll change their minds and open it to the public. And when that day comes, if it ever comes, I know exactly what will happen. Those 3 silent passengers will become 4. Then 5. Then 6. Until every seat is full. I've had nightmares about that, standing at the control panel, my hand on the button, watching a train full of strangers go out and a train full of corpses come back in. I wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, the sound of the brake runs hiss in my ears. The worst part isn't the dreams. The worst part is that every time I close my eyes, I see the look on Markesha's face as the train left the station. That grin, full of life and thrill-seeking mischief. And then I see her again in the brake run, eyes open but unseeing, still strapped in beside Carlos. The same seat. The same silence. Sometimes I think I hear something when I'm near the ride, even if it's not running. A faint whisper under the hum of the park, like the rattle of wheels on track, but slower, stretched out. I never stick around to listen. I just walk away. But no matter where I go in the park, I can feel it, like the ultimate is watching me, waiting for me to step onto that platform and take my turn. Waiting for the moment when I'll finally join the others in the back row.